I've fallen, but my institutional care provider won't pick me up. The details after the introduction. If you've attended an aging in place planning workshop, you know that one of the issues that we talk about in that particular workshop are inherent risks of institutional care. Among these is differences between institutions in the way that they treat patients or residents at a time of crisis. There is a very famous story that came out of California that was reported by Fox News a number of years ago, where a senior woman who had a cardiac arrest was not given cardiac support by the nursing home in which she was a resident, but was instead made comfortable, and she awaited emergency services to come and take care of her. As a result of the delay, at least allegedly, by the family, the elderly patient died. And that raised the question in the minds of many is how many of these institutions are not providing cardiac care at a time of some type of cardiac or pulmonary event. And come to find out, many institutions were not. Some institutions were only doing what that institution did, which is make the patient comfortable, do what's necessary to provide immediate care, but then make the patient comfortable and await emergency services. Now, just so you know, this is not an irrational conclusion. So I don't want to make this seem like there is just absolute heartlessness on the part of institutions. The argument of an institution is that if a person needs one, two, or three people to support them for a period of time after a crisis event, well, the reality is that leaves however other many people that those three people are normally supposed to support without any support. And so, from a standpoint of providing the best care for everyone, it only makes sense to do what is immediately necessary for the person and then allow for emergency services to take over when they arrive. Recently, we have learned that there is a difference in the way that assisted living facilities are treating fall patients. And the Washington Post wrote an interesting article, which of course I will put the link in the written materials, that not all facilities will, at a time of a fall of a resident, actually pick them up. Lift Assist 911 calls from assisted living and other seniors' homes have spiked by 30% nationwide in recent years to nearly 42,000 calls a year. An analysis of fire department emergency call data by the Washington Post found. That's nearly 3 times faster than the increase in overall 911 call volume during the same 2019-2022 period. The article notes this is prevalent in Illinois. Why is this happening? Well, some people argue that it's to avoid liability and cost. Further, facilities may have a policy against lifting a resident. So what you will need to do if you are a loved one, if you have a loved one going into its assisted living facility, is you'll want to examine the contract and you'll want to examine the policies of the institution to find out if they have a no lift clause. Now, obviously, these no lift policies and these calls are creating some drama. The growth has infuriated first responders who say these kinds of calls, which involve someone who has fallen and is not injured but can't get up, unfairly burden taxpayers and occupy firefighters with non-emergencies that should be handled by staff at facilities. And keep in mind that these facilities often charge residents as much as $7,000 a month. Illinois is a hotspot for the controversy. Lift Assist here in Illinois accounted for 1 in 20 of all 911 fire calls, the highest proportion of any state. Data that was obtained by the Washington Post shows. In Rockford, Illinois, a city of 150,000 residents, about an hour outside of Chicago, 5 assisted living facilities, including Heritage Woods, called for non-injury lift assist 233 times last year, triple the number of calls in 2021. Keep in mind that 233 times in a year is almost 1 call per day. When firefighters arrived at Heritage Woods the morning that a Washington Post reporter was following the emergency services, caretakers at the facility directed them to an elderly resident lying on the floor. She was perfectly fine, she said. She just couldn't get back on her feet by herself. The facility staff wouldn't help lift her. So 2 firefighters helped her up and made sure she was okay. Chad Callison was one of the firefighters. Callison told the Washington Post, "It doesn't make sense. Why are they calling us?" The answer, according to industry critics and fire officials, is that companies want to avoid the risk and expense associated with picking someone up off the floor. Some of that risk and expense is liability. Like many cities, Rockford provides lift assists for free. Some senior care homes say they don't have the ability to lift fallen residents. Many have adopted no-lift policies to avoid the risk of back injuries for staff and other potential liabilities. But firefighters and other experts say that there are tools to make lifting easier and safer, ranging from $70 cloth straps with handles to $1,500 hydraulic lifts. Heritage Woods, which accounted for the highest number of lift assist calls to 911 in Rockford last year, is owned by Guardant Management Solutions, the 10th largest assisted living provider in the nation. One wonders why they can't afford hydraulic lifts in all of their institutions. Co-president Julie Simpkins from Guardant Management declined to answer specific questions, but did say in a statement that the company works to create a collaborative approach to the overutilization of non-emergent lift assist calls through cross-training, resource availability discussions, and collaboration. Of course, I don't know what that word salad really means because there was no details in the statement. A nurse who worked at an assisted living facility in Greensboro, North Carolina, who spoke to the Washington Post on the condition of anonymity because she was not authorized to speak with the media, said her company required caretakers to call 911 even if a resident had just slipped harmlessly out of a chair. If you're on the floor, period, you'd have to call, said the nurse, who left her position last year. She said residents were often embarrassed by the lift assist calls. Some begged her not to dial 911. She said she had no choice. Fire officials point out that they bring no special skill to such situations. It's just a matter of who's doing the work. The dispute over lift assist comes as improvements in fire safety and the nation's aging population have changed the nature of a firefighter's job. Today, fire and EMS agencies are more likely to deal with older adult fall victims than an actual fire victim. Lift assists are now the 7th most common type of 911 call, with an average of 1,800 lift assist calls every day nationwide, according to an analysis of the National Fire Incident Reporting System, which collects emergency calls from more than 23,000 fire departments. The data does not include calls to about 13,700 EMS agencies, which are separate from the reporting fire departments, although there is significant overlap in calls between the two databases. The calls often come from elderly people living at home and at facilities. While both situations strain resources, fire officials say senior care homes should be equipped to handle these calls. This was the statement of Kevin Jules, an EMS division chief in Lawrence, Kansas. He said, "You go in there and they have staff all over the place. It's part of our job that's being taken advantage of. And we've mostly stayed quiet about it." A growing number of cities and towns, from Rockland, California, to Naples, Florida, to Lincoln, Nebraska, have started pushing back with special fees of $100 to $800 for senior lift assist calls. Most of the fees are targeted at what fire officials call the frequent flyers, assisted living and senior care facilities. In Anchorage, the fire department introduced a lift assist fee to prevent assisted living facilities from understaffing or having inadequate resources for people under their care. Joseph Rutz, the fire department administrator, said in an email, the first lift is free, but a facility's second lift assist within 12 months costs $250. Kansas City, Missouri added a lift assist fee to discourage repeat offenders, said Battalion Chief Michael Hopkins. The amount is flexible and set to be reasonably calculated to defray costs according to city code. The department also contacts facilities to tell them they need to hire some orderlies, he said. In Mequon, Wisconsin, the fee is billed directly to the facility to emphasize that it's the company's responsibility, said Deputy Fire Chief Kurt Zellman. We tell them they can't pass that on to the patient, he said. But, of course, they can't prohibit it. Industry groups have largely opposed being singled out. Mark Hardman, the president of the Illinois Healthcare Association and Illinois Center for Assisted Living, made a statement to the Post, which said, basically, why should assistance to a resident in a care facility, which is their home, be held to a different standard? Assisted living facilities, which serve more than 1 million residents nationwide, are not as tightly regulated as the nursing homes, which serve about 1.2 million people, according to industry estimates. The growth in assisted living has led to new problems. A post-investigation last year revealed that more than 2,000 people had wandered away from assisted living and dementia care units or had been left unattended outside these facilities since 2018, resulting in more than 100 deaths, often due to heat or cold exposure. And of course, if you've attended an aging in place planning workshop, you know that such dangers of lack of attendance or wandering occur as a result of transport. So before you even get into the institution, a patient or resident who is being transferred from one institution to another, such as a hospital to an assisted living facility, can be lost. That person may not be escorted into the facility and may wander away, sometimes causing medical problems, sometimes causing death. Assisted living facilities appear to make far more 911 calls for lift assist than nursing homes, which have higher staffing requirements, according to Ron Nunziato, a senior policy director at the Healthcare Council of Illinois, which represents nursing homes. Nunziato said he rarely called 911 for lift assists at a nursing home during the 3 decades that he ran a company that included both nursing homes and assisted living facilities. He said they had enough staff and equipment to get someone off the floor, out of the tub, whatever the case may be. He added, we don't believe that skilled nursing facilities are causing the concern. Now, according to the Washington Post, most facilities described as nursing homes in the fire department call data for lift assist calls were, in fact, assisted living or independent living homes. The routine failure to help residents off the floor, however, is a stark example of how senior care homes limit services in surprising ways. In late December, according to the Washington Post, Eric Fishbein's parents both ended up on the floor of their apartment at Ingleside at Rock Creek in Washington, a luxurious community that offers everything from independent living apartments to assisted living and locked memory care units. Fishbein said her father, 82, had bent down to pick something up at their independent living apartment. Then her mother, 80, tried to help him and ended up on the floor too. Neither was hurt, Fishbein said, so her father called the front desk for help. But a security officer at the facility told them he needed to call 911 because he wasn't allowed to lift residents, Fishbein said. I was shocked they had to call the fire department, she said. There is a memory care and assisted living facility in the same facility. Why didn't they call a nurse from one of the other properties to assist? Fishbein lives in California, away from her parents. Ingleside officials did not respond to repeated requests from the Washington Post for comment. In Washington, the number of lift assist calls has become a challenging issue, said Stephen Garber, a DC fire sergeant paramedic. The fire department does not charge lift assist fees. Rockford would like to, but lacks the authority because of a quirk of state law. Fire Chief Michael Pankow said it's frustrating that the department is being used as a stopgap for this group of facilities. They call and we just keep coming, agreed Mayor Tim McNamara. City fire officials said they've talked with facility administrators about ways to handle the situations for themselves. For 3 or 4 months, the numbers go down. Things go great, said Jonathan Larson, Rockford's EMS coordinator. But then the staff turnover rate goes up and the numbers go back up. Rockford might get its lift assist fees if a proposed Illinois law passes the state legislature. The bill's main sponsor, State Representative Mike Kelly, a Democrat, is a Chicago firefighter who has seen a jump in lift assists. We're not trying to get out of doing the calls, he said. We're just trying to make sure we're available for real emergencies. But the fee might only provide a temporary cure. Peoria, a city 2 hours south of Rockford, has had a $400 lift assist fee on its books since 2020. The fee was a deterrent for a little while, Peoria Fire Chief Sean Solberger said in an interview, but then the calls from the assisted living facilities started ticking back up. Solberger said he suspects that some level of cost analysis was going on within these assisted living places. Even with the fee, it was still cheaper to dial 911. And of course, that's the bottom line, is that the institutions will do what is least expensive. And if there is an expense that is incurred as a result of these lift assists, if that means them buying additional equipment or having to hire additional staff, that's going to reduce their profitability. And of course, at the end of the day, all of those costs are ultimately passed on to at least fee-paying patients. So if you are a resident of an independent living facility or an assisted living facility, you are paying for that care. And as their profitability goes down and their costs go up, your costs are indeed going to increase. The bottom line of this whole issue is an object lesson regarding institutional care. First, although institutional care has obviously a concern regarding the quality of care that it provides, the cost of care is still an important consideration and often an impediment to what is in the best interest of a resident. Consider that a resident who falls and has people around that could pick them up within a few minutes now has to wait not only for a resident to find them and identify that they have fallen, but then they have to proceed to wherever it is necessary for them to make a report and call for 911. And then, of course, the delay of 911 coming and then identifying the particular room where the resident is at. This can't be just a small amount of time. Even with the emergency services being as amazing as they are and as responsive as they are, there still is going to be some time lag there while a patient is basically languishing on the floor. I can't imagine what that must do to their psychological and emotional health. And of course, that's not part of the consideration here. It seems to be more of a consideration of cost. Now, I do want to note that all of the story and all of the instances that we've talked about, one of the things that they've indicated is that there was no apparent injury to the residents. And that leads to a second issue. And that is that without lifting up the residents, there really is no way to know whether these patients are injured or not. They may have injuries, but until they're actually bearing weight on their joints, for example, or putting weight on their back, they may not be experiencing pain and suffering. And so it is a little bit concerning that patients are being left on the floor. The third thing to keep in mind is that the reality of differences between institutions is an inherent risk of institutional care. A lot of folks pick institutions based upon what their past experiences have been or what other people have told them. But there is a vast difference between how one institution treats a patient and another institution treats that same patient. And as a result, it is very, very difficult to make decisions with regard to which institutions are good and which institutions are bad. If you want more information regarding how difficult that is, look at the series of articles that I've written regarding Care Compare and the information that the government provides with regard to the quality of different institutions. It's not just patients, but it's patients' families that are misled and reliant upon the at least implicit idea that their parents or their loved ones are being well cared for. I don't believe there would be very many people who would say that they believe or that they think that the best care available is to leave a loved one languishing on the floor for 15, 20 minutes or more awaiting emergency services while there are staff and people available that could simply lift them up. Lifting a patient up can't take more than a couple minutes. And even when there is difficulty, even if you have to bring in a hydraulic lift, I can't imagine that the process of lifting a patient is going to take more than 5 minutes, which means there really is a disconnect between what patients and what the public would probably see as high quality care and what the institutions characterize as high quality care. And just that distinction should be alarming. The last word I will give to you is that if you are a person who is looking at an institutional care arrangement, either for yourself or for a family member, it is vitally important for you to educate yourself regarding these types of decisions. Have a long discussion with a representative of the institution. Find out what the institution allows and what they don't allow. Find out what type of equipment do they have and what type of equipment don't they have. One of the questions I would always ask is, do they provide cardiac support? Do they have automatic defibrillators available to their staff? Are their staff allowed to employ and use those immediately upon identifying a need? Is a staff member allowed to provide cardiac support throughout the period between the time of identifying a need and emergency services arriving? And with regard to falls, is a staff member going to assist you or assist your loved one in getting up? I hope you found this information interesting. More importantly, I hope you find it valuable. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share. It would always help if you comment, particularly if you have ideas or questions that you would like me to address in future videos. I hope you all stay safe and well, and God bless you.